So, Brian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Brian Saunders, the Global Director and Head of Industry Consulting for SAS's IoT division. So myself and team, we work for SAS Institute, which for the folks that don't know who that is, next year we'll have been in business 50 years, been a leader in statistics, machine learning, AI for all of our history. I believe we're still the largest privately held analytics software company in the world, about 3.4 billion a year in revenue. So my team, as industry consultants, I'm not a data scientist. That's why I have friends like Sam that I can rely on. We bring more of that industry domain. So we come from manufacturing, energy, transportation, et cetera, and really help our customers adopt AI technology into their business processes, not for the sake of building models, but for the sake of driving new, improved outcomes for their enterprise. And so we try to help sort of bridge that gap between, I wouldn't say IT, OT, but more the business side, business user context, and the sort of technology context of AI.
So, if you have any question, please raise your hand, and one of my colleagues, and we have a question in the back.
Yeah. Hi, Mark Lee, Dow Inc. This is a question for Sam. So with your closed loop integrations, for, closed loop systems for machine vision, I'm assuming those are at the edge devices. How are you doing your distribution for updating or kind of scaling up those different edge devices and adding in new cameras, things like that, for your processes?
Good question. So with cameras, I think we briefly hit on it there. The scaling is a challenge, and we kind of looked around as a team of say 4 or 5 data scientists that were on it, and we're like, we could keep scaling this and scaling and scaling and scaling. But the partnership that we've had with SAS and SoftServe has helped really automate and do a lot of that in point and click when adding new cameras, so you don't necessarily have to line up people for years. I think my favorite expression is that maybe a lifetime achievement award. Now, your other question about closed loop controls is that's a very high risk, high reward application, and you want to make sure you do monitoring. So again, not trying to sell anyone on software, but model monitoring. When you have a model of that criticality, of course you want to monitor: is it running? 2, is it getting data? And then 3, over time, have I seen significant false positives, false negatives? And even there's some things, some business logic on top of the models, like, okay, I just rejected 5 things in a row. Why? What's going on here? So there's some fail safes in there we built just so folks don't, just so the model doesn't go crazy on us or, do anything too out there.
Yeah. So is your model in the cloud then, and then you're just using your edge computes to do general processing and then sending its results or kind of summaries in, or is it doing most of it within that edge compute?
We've done a combination of both.
Okay.
It's kind of a bit of an internal debate which one's the best. I'm not an architect. That's why I have to call Brian often and be like, hey, what do you think about this? But I think that the idea of edge devices we've been experimenting with, and then of course we have some cloud deployments as well.
Okay, thank you.
On the edge versus cloud debate, usually when Sam asks me that question, my first question back is, what's the speed of decision that you're trying to make? And if that is something that you have hours to days to take an action, cloud is certainly acceptable now because GPUs are a little cheaper. You can run some of the CV workloads more efficiently. But if you're trying to do closed loop or something to take an immediate action, edge processing is certainly required. Same technology for packaging, and Sam's indicated he's not here to hawk software, which I'm not either necessarily. I'm just here to kind of give my experiences, but I do think that's a key component, that you have the flexibility to deploy where business value is going to be best captured.
One question I wanted to ask Shanpin. A lot of the work that you are doing with the data quality, it's like setting up the foundation right. It's not the shiny thing. So how is do you get from, employees at your company that they want the shiny things, that they don't see the value in the good work that you guys are doing?
Oh, always. I go into a site and I said, hey, I need 40 hours just to validate the data that we've come up with, and you're like, why? So people want to see the outcome, and I use that example of that hours, business hours in Google Maps. Like, who wants to update that? And then you also need to have a governance model, because you don't want anybody just putting in the new hours and then it's gonna shut the business down. So you gotta be smart about that governance model. And yeah, a lot of this is that nobody's gonna say, hey, you did a great job on the cleaning up the data. There's no awards for that. I wish there were.
Right. Brian, would you like to shed a little more light on how you guys have helped Georgia Pacific? And is there any lesson learned for you guys as well?
Yeah, so Sam mentioned 2018, sort of starting the journey with CSC. I think we've been kind of hand in hand ever since across a number of things. And I'd like to think in some small part we have helped with some best practices, maybe some new ways of looking at things as an analytics company that serves customers worldwide. Our field of vision could be a little wider. We've seen some things that maybe they haven't considered. At the same time, I think GP pushes our technology to levels of scale and performance that we dream of. We hope our customers can get that level of benefit, and so I think it's been a great collaboration and a partnership. Specifically around the more recent projects with worker safety, it's kind of a parallel path that we went on. I think GP was starting to look at this internally. We were having some conversations with other customers and seeing similar things, hearing safety come back up. And, in my years of manufacturing, every plant you go in, so many days since a reportable injury, and that number just kept getting bigger and bigger over the years. Well, we've kind of looked at the data at the end of 2023, and decades old transitions of fewer and fewer injuries, that curve changed. And I think 2.3 million reportable injuries in the US in 2022, that was up 4.5%. I think the bigger challenge was deaths, fatalities were up over 5,400 of those, which was 5.7% increase in our industrial environments. And that just felt wrong. It felt like we could build a better mousetrap. So we started collaborating again with Sam, with a company called SoftServe, to build an application that could go tackle some of these sort of top 10 OSHA issues. Open pose models to detect, are you leaning over a running conveyor? How are you interacting with energized equipment? Are you using your PPE in a machine shop? And what we found was, I think Shen had talked about the standards and documentation, global. The reality is most companies have kind of these one-size-fits-all safety programs that really haven't been tuned to each facility or to each work action. And we said, well, part of that is just move from sort of a reactive safety approach to proactive. We can use cameras, we can use other plant instrumentation to give awareness, give context, because we've all done it. I know I do it. You'll do something 100 times. The first 99 times you did it wrong, but you never paid the price. It's the 100th time that you get caught. So getting in front of these issues sooner, I think, is important. Whether that be safety, whether that be predictive maintenance issues or quality issues, we've kind of been trying to help across that full spectrum.
We have one question in the back.
Peter Manos, ARC Advisor Group. Brian, what you just said inspires me to raise this question. It's all around, we need to be able to talk about safety-related improvements in ways that are difficult for a solution provider to get an end user to write a case study. And safety is not alone in that regard, right? If you're trying to improve emissions monitoring, leak detection, a bunch of things that get reported in terms of sustainability, no end user wants to say, yeah, our company was doing X amount of bad stuff, and now we're doing 0.9x amount of bad stuff. But what you did just there, right? You went from the top down. Here's the U.S. statistic that we as industry members are looking at improving and are improving. And I would just like to ask everyone who works for any industrial company, do you see an opportunity to pivot to your strategic marketing people internally and say, it would benefit all industries to start getting more comfortable with that kind of language so as to talk about the benefits of things solution providers are doing that they're really having trouble marketing because of that issue, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I think one of the biggest challenges we face when we have these conversations is exactly that. It's well, you mean you want me to actually know that bad things are happening so that maybe my liability, my risk level increases. And it's like, well, no, I mean, you can look at it that way, that did you know about something and not take an action? Well, that's an unfortunate situation. But if you know something and you can get out in front of it just a step sooner, I think it's for the betterment of your company. I think for the betterment of your brand. And Preet talked about it, both Sam and Chenpin did. The reality is workforce turnover. This is a revolving door. Processes are getting more complex. You're demanding more productivity out of your employees. You're asking folks with less experience to operate like they've been there for 20 years. Well, safety is one of those things that it's going to pay a price in those sort of dynamic changing environments if you don't sort of put some of these institutional controls in place. And again, I think this is good for business, not bad for business.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And I want to ask Chenpin and Sam your thoughts on this, because a lot of time when we talk to end users and they talk about their digital transformation journey and project justification, things like safety or data quality, it can be hard to justify. Do you see that as a challenge?
Not so much as a challenge to justify.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, before, we try to keep metrics on just about anything with our models, whether they be increasing false positives or false negatives, what have you. I think with anytime safety is involved, it's, you're not having to just pour over spreadsheets and trying to justify, it's a no-brainer, and that's the culture that we have.
I think I've been this value journey for a long time for any type of digital transformation, whether it's MES or any digital procedures or anything like that. The part that most people think about and why we get challenged is they think about just the software cost, but then there's the everything else cost that nobody talks about, and that's where I think executives are nervous because they don't know what they don't know. Because you bring in the software, really, some people really like it, and you realize, well, I also need to get the mobile device. Oh, by the way, I need to put Wi-Fi everywhere. Oh, by the way, I don't have power here. Oh, by the way, this is class 1 div 2. Oh, by the way, nobody's gonna let me use this in the plant. So then you're like, all these barriers, you start adding up, and people are not accounting for those barriers. And so that makes that whole value case very difficult. Yeah, I've been in that journey. Every time you go in, lately, I think it's about the reducing the people are not going to come to work for you if there's going to be a level of expectations. They're going to expect your mobile devices because they're used to it. So at some point, that's going to be your driver for this.
I want to ask both of you again, any one particular challenge on your journey that you faced, and how were you able to address that or trying to address that?
Data security is always difficult. I will just say that. That it's you think those are you don't like the security people, but really their job is to keep people safe or the data safe, the information safe. Just like worker safety, you may not like EHS, but they are there to keep people safe for a reason, right? Nobody wants to go be the bad guy. But data security is always evolving. What we used to go do is no longer true anymore. So we always have to evolve and keep up with it. The threats, the hackers are not going to say, I'm going to stop innovating. They are also digital transforming. They're using AI to spoof you, to hack you. So that's a space that we often don't think about.
Yeah, I think a challenge that I think probably most data scientists, I mean, I would speak to data scientists on this one is, I mentioned early on in my talk about having to iterate and come out with multiple versions. The biggest challenge, I think, is to help your audience understand that this is a journey and they may ask you for a product that's like a Tesla, but next Friday you can give them a skateboard, and the Friday after that you can give them a unicycle, and the Friday after that you could maybe upgrade to a bicycle, and slowly you're adding to. I hit on a little point too that's kind of it's a little humorous, but it's true about getting a lot of false positives on the safety application. You've got a tree that casts a shadow, it moves back and forth. It looks like a stick person, so the model says, "Oh, that's a person." So you're going to run into situations like that. And I think for all data scientists, all technical people in the room, it's best to not get defeated by that, or not understand that there are ways to improve it. Communicate that with your audience. Make sure they understand they're on a journey with you. And eventually, as I mentioned in that analogy, you'll get to the Tesla, if you will, or what have you. It's an iterative cycle.
I'll add one challenge from my side, and I think this is, you attend these events, and we tend to like to talk about the new shiny object. So a lot of discussion around generative AI. I would ask any of you, who in your plant that's a frontline operator is going to be watching machine or process drift, get an alert, and say, "Oh, that's an interesting alert. Let me formulate a well-structured prompt and pass it over to my LLM and get a response." They're not. So I think you have to think through who is the user and what's the best way for them to execute their job. And there's analytics existed before Gen AI hit the scene. I mean, there's a continuum of capabilities. It's the right tool for the right job. And I think you can get tons of value. And to Sam's point, that crawl, walk, run mentality, just get started. And I know sometimes we get these tops down initiatives that go deliver a Gen AI strategy, and that'll kind of distract you from, well, there's some basic blocking and tackling we can do to transform in a very significant way, just using regression models to detect drift in process or drift in mechanical devices in terms of their operating profiles. So don't forget about all the other tools you have in the toolbox. Right tool for the right job. That would be my one piece of advice. Don't let your eyes get too big.
I'm gonna add, it's a journey.
Yes.
And most users are expecting the latest and greatest, full featured, all the featured. But in reality, every software is evolving, and a lot of leaders don't understand that. They think it's a start, finish, and we're done. But it's a iterative journey. The software on your phone keeps updating. Somebody's spending time, money, and effort to go update it. That needs to be sort of resourced. So a lot of that, when you want to go into an investment of that, that's yet another thing we need to go work on.
One additional thing I'll throw in for the techies in the room, since we've been talking a lot about computer vision in the terms of safety, to Brian's point, if you are going to do the shiny thing of generative AI, this is an area where you cannot have hallucinations. And it's not a cop out to say, oh, every model has hallucinations. There are ways to control that. So with safety, there cannot be any hallucinations on any of this stuff. That's the challenge. That's always going to be there. But if you have the right folks working for you, they'll find ways around it.
Okay, to wrap up this session as well as this forum, would any of you like to give last piece of advice?
I've already said it, but I think it bears repeating because I've been a part of many teams that don't practice this. Brian said crawl, walk, run. That's one. Another derivative of that is perfection is the enemy of progress. Adopt that in just about every tech cycle you have. And over time, you're going to look back and see tremendous growth.
we heard a lot about AI at this session. I'll say it's gonna change. The reason it's a buzz is that the lowers the barrier to go into unstructured data. For me, unstructured data has been untapped. We have a lot of information there, more than our structured data. So Gen AI has made it easy to get into it. That's the reason I'd say the hallucinations exist. You gotta, just like any other technology, you need to know what the weaknesses are and then have a plan to address it.
Yeah, just maybe a disjointed final answer, but with kind of with the journey of Gen AI, I mean, we talk about cybersecurity, safety. We tend to think about that in terms of intrusion detection and keeping my data safe, but think about your employees as well. It's not uncommon that people decide, hey, this would be interesting. I can throw it in Chat GPT and get a response. Well, that's pretty bad if it's your proprietary work instructions or process documents. So be very, put the guardrails in place. I'll just say that. I think too, just to Sam's point, get started, take the first step. Data quality is always going to be a problem. Don't try to solve the big data problem and every system, every piece of data you've connected with this real well-formatted common data model. Because guess what? You're going to be 3 years in and everyone's going to be looking like, well, what have we done to change the trajectory of our business? Probably not a lot other than invest in a really cool data structure. So do it piecemeal. Like for this problem set, what data systems are required? Focus on those first, and then you take that next step. What data systems can help augment that? So I really think that's an important piece. And maybe the last piece that may sound odd from a technology company, but I could give everyone in here the technology that Sam and his team uses. And I guarantee you I would not get equal results from all of you. It's more than the technology, it's the culture. I mean, the Dow journey, the GP journey, all the Exxon journeys, everyone that I've heard speak here, they talk about that journey. And it's really important, the organizational structure and your processes for how you manage that change management. So don't undersell that. But I've also heard, well, we do corporate level, tops down. We tell the plants what to do. Well, good luck with that. You better include them in the process, or you may be in for a tough road in this journey. But again, I think also, I mean, you've heard me talk about partners that we have. Technology is evolving so quickly. Don't be afraid to use an ecosystem to help accelerate that path. And whether that's a SaaS technology for your analytics or something else, that's completely up to you as an individual. But there's so many components to deliver that end-to-end value. I don't think you can do it by keeping a heads down inward focus and not considering the sort of technology innovations around you. So, that's it.
So can we have a big round of applause for our speakers and panelists?